Güneş, our colleague from University of Istanbul, this year sabbatical at French Institute for Geopolitics and the Center of Research and Geopolitical Analysis of our university here at MS8, who is an author of a very recent publication, Salafism at the Gate, Turkey's Foreign Policy and the Jihadist Entities in the Middle East. So, a specialist on the confessional issues, but also on Central Asia and having written on Central Asia economics and the notion of transition. The title of Mr. Güneş's paper is A Medium-Range Forecast for a Middle Power, Turkish Foreign Policy Dilemmas and Geopolitical Trends.
Yes. Thank you, and I have 15 minutes.
Exactly.
So I have to be very quick. Well, actually, I'd like to start with the scope of my paper. I will not talk about the intentions or ambitions of the Turkish government, or neither I will talk about the ideological framework that drive the foreign policy decisions from the Turkish government side. Rather, I will focus on the outputs. Let me start with an example. Probably everybody will agree on the assumption that Turkish government at the initial stage of the Syrian crisis wanted to invade directly the Syrian soil. But it didn't, because it couldn't. So I will not focus about any intentions. I will try to understand the general framework that determines a medium range, or actually a medium power, a regional power's actions. So my first part would be basically about the theoretical assumptions on that case. So, well, usually we incline to focus on the latest developments. So most of us have in mind the main Turkish foreign policy agenda is the Syrian crisis, and secondly the Kurdish issue related to Syrian northern territories, and also internally the economic crisis and the Kurdish question, again, domestically. But when we need to talk about the general conditions of the foreign policy, we have to take into account the other elements as well, and to see what is unique about Turkey's foreign policy environment and what is distinct. So I will try in the remaining 14 minutes to explore all those things. Okay, let me start with the most recent one. As Marija also mentioned, this debate with, this quarrel with the United States on the F-35 jets. F-35 US fighter jets versus S-400 Russian air defense missile system debate is not unique. Let me start with that, so that I will try to explain Turkey and similar situations and its relation to the international system's characteristics. It is not unique, nor the other dispute between the great power and its ally, Turkey, is not unique as well. If you just, if you watched the TV yesterday, Mr. Trump, actually, President Trump, quite warmly welcomed Sisi, but at the same time, exactly in the same hours, Mike Pompeo threatened Egypt if they buy Su-35. This is Su-35 Russian air jets. So another example is quite known as well, the Pakistani-US relations. So this is not unique. This is all about the international system, the global system, post-Cold War global system. So alliances in the 21st century globally became more complex, partial and loose. India, Pakistan, Egypt, Turkey, and many other examples I can count. Most of the new disputes are new, but not unique to Turkey. Rather, they are the symptoms of emerging new world order, the new international system. Therefore, understanding the new global system will help us to explore the structural dynamics in bilateral relations. It could be US, Turkey, Russian Turkey, and so on. The dynamics of bilateral relations among the old strategic partners in case of Turkish-US relations. It is much more important if the one partner is a superpower and the other one is asymmetrically a regional power. Secondly, however, analysis of global level factors would be still far from being elaborate if not considered together with the subsystem, regional system level, and also with the domestic factors. This paper is an attempt to understand the main parameters in analyzing the Turkish foreign policy trends in a foreseeable near future. It's an attempt to predict Turkish foreign policy trends. So, to accomplish this task, the presentation will be divided into two parts. In the first part, I will mostly talk about the theoretical assumptions in evaluating the middle power states' foreign policy decisions and their environment. In the second part, I will directly try to apply those in case of Turkey and try to analyze Turkey's capacities and challenges. Obviously, the US-Turkish relations will be at the epicenter of analysis, not just because of Washington-Ankara relations' significance, but also because of United States' immense role in affecting the development in all the regions that Turkey has a role or has an interest. But I have to count all those regions, because Turkey is not just a regional power, but a multi-regional power. Those include Black Sea region, Balkans, Caucasus, indirectly Central Asia, Middle East, Greater Middle East, and Eastern Mediterranean plus Europe. So if we count more than 5 regional systems at least, Turkey is part of. Also, well, then one more region I can add is the Horn of Africa. Turkey has a great interest in that region and already many important steps there. So, why power capacity and systemic determinants matter in predicting foreign policies of the states, I'll try to explain, and what factors determines the foreign policy patterns. So I will follow the Copenhagen school scheme in mainly Barry Boozan and Ole Weber in explaining the hierarchy of the new international political security order. We know that the system structure is no longer bipolar, but what comes after bipolarity is hotly contested. Following Boozan and Weber, I will argue that on top of the new hierarchy stands one superpower plus 4 great powers. In the middle of the pyramid lies the middle powers or the regional powers, including Turkey. At that point, it is necessary to differentiate superpowers and great powers, even though both are at the global level. And then to differentiate them with the regional level, with the regional powers. The disintegration of the Soviet Union definitely brought the period of bipolarity to an end. But what was behind is a big debate. The problem was confusingly large range of significant powers. The problem was mainly the existence of a large range of significant powers, many of which did not easily slot into the categories of the theory. At one end of the spectrum of the significant power is the United States, clearly, but at the other hand, there are many countries, including Israel, Iran, Brazil, Indonesia, India, Pakistan, and Turkey. In between, a set of second-ranked powers that did not come close to the measuring up to the United States of America, but which were significant global players in one way or another, and which clearly surpassed regional or middle power status, so they have the capacity beyond the regional powers. Those include China, so I will name those 4 countries, one superpower plus the global great powers. China, Japan, Russia, and EU per se, or if we divide it into main constituents, so Germany, France, and Britain. Taking these definitions and historical criteria into consideration, we propose the following definitional criteria for 3-tiered scheme: superpowers and great powers at the system level, and regional powers at the regional subsystem level. So superpowers, the criteria for the superpowers that are demanding in that they require broad spectrum capabilities exercised across the whole of the international system. Superpowers must possess first-class military, political capabilities and the economies to support such capabilities. They must be capable of and also exercise the global military and political reach. I mean, so no need to repeat all those facts and definitions that you know. The great powers, on the other hand, achieving great power status is less demanding in terms of both capability and behavior, but they must be accepted as the main players in the international system. And the regional powers define bipolarity in a given regional complex. It could be unipolar within the regional complex. It could be unipolar as in the South Africa. There's no rival regional power there. It could be bipolar in South Asia, or as you know, it could be multipolar in the Middle Eastern case. So we have Iran, Saudis, Turkey, Israel, Egypt at least. So it's quite multipolar. And South America and South Asia. So their capabilities loom large in their regions, but do not register much in the broad spectrum way at the global level. To be more specific, we should answer the question once again, how important is the regional level? Barry Dusen and Oliver demarcate the global security system with the regional one as a continuous yet distinct entities. Interplay of global powers whose capabilities enable them to transcend distance constitute the system of systemic level, and interplay of lesser powers whose main security environment is their local region represent the subsystem. So the regional level has its autonomy and yet not independent totally. So the characteristic, if I have enough time for them, I have to very quickly talk about them. Yes, so the global power in the post-Cold War order in the late 2010s, hierarchical, multicentric polarity. So it's not bipolar anymore. So I prefer to name it with many other researchers as a hierarchical multicentric polarity. So this integration of the international political scene and the disintegration of alliances, and plus a new concept, this intermediation of the actors, those are some important elements that characterize the global order. Secondly, the blurring and the distorting boundaries of one superpower and four great powers. For example, India is knocking the door for, to be accepted as a great power. And so it's the rise and the fall or the decline and the rise of the powers is a process happening at the moment in the last in the post-Cold War era. So it's a quite dynamic process. More complex and more partial alliances of the system is happening in the post-Cold War era, as I mentioned already. Turkish-US relations is an example. Pakistani-US relation is another example. Egypt-US relations, another one. Russia, for example, Russian-Chinese-Indian triangle is another example, so it's really partial. Even in the case of Syrian war, though Russia is totally backing the Assad regime and the Syrian government, but still never ever intervene any Israeli intervention in the Syrian soil. So these are quite partial. So, and we can give many other examples. And this is something new for the new international system. The US dominance, however, in economic, financial, and political area is countered in a soft, balanced way, by organizations like BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organization, but with a very soft increase in the military confrontations is an important fact, and it's especially important for the Middle East, because the Cold War military spending's nominal level surpassed by the mid-2010s. So in the last 10 years, we have more and more countries are allocating more money for their military spending. So the arms race is on the agenda for many countries, and it's especially an important determinant for understanding the Middle Eastern developments. If you just remember the Qatari-Saudi crisis, you know, the reason, I mean, it just resolved with a new purchase agreement by the Qatar to the United States. So it was just about arms selling, actually. So it doesn't explain, of course, everything, but it is much more important than 10 years ago. So the regional level determinants, the changing weights of countries is an important point, I guess. For example, like 10 years ago, any Middle Eastern studies course would start like understanding Middle East requires understanding Turkey, Iran, and Egypt. Now it's not Egypt, but Saudi Arabia, for example, which replaced Egypt's role in many areas. Increasing arms race, and I think this is for many of you a new thing, the nuclear game. It's not just about Iran. Because the very logic of, I mean, the reason why I'm mentioning and focusing on this regional complex is that, actually. One actor's act trigger the other's counteracts. So the Iran's efforts for nuclearization already started, triggered, actually, the process in Saudi Arabia and Turkey. So they are not just about energy, for sure. And this is a really, really dangerous game for the region. And again, relatively and new, really.
Absolutely. Okay. Even less.
Okay. So then I have to jump to, like, very quick tracking of Turkey numbers. Turkey, by the global firepower index, is the 6th country, like, 8 years ago, and now it's 11th. So this is an incredible place ranking for a country who has a 17th biggest economy and 52nd gross domestic product at purchasing power parity, and 68, so it's decreasing, GDP per capita nominal, and 64 even in Human Development Index, so a composite index, and 80th plus in the gender inequality, and still lower levels in freedom, press freedom, and transparency index, and so on. So what does that mean? It means Turkey has a strong military capacity. It has an economy quite dependent, as Manager already mentioned, quite dependent technologically and financially, but it is still an upper medium ranking economic capacity, but lower in terms of social development. And to very quickly analyze, usually we just focus on Syria, but Turkey has an immense military presence in all around the region. Azerbaijan, northern Cyprus, we all know, Iraq, Qatar, Somali is a very important point, and it has a huge base there actually, and Syria in various parts of Syria. And also Turkey take part in taking part still in many international NATO and UN military operations like E4, KFOR, ISAF, NATO, Baltic, and so on. So there are actually 4 possible scenarios for Turkey in the coming 4 years. Turkey will move towards the Silk Road or Shanghai cooperation, Russia, Iran, and China option. Secondly, it could be like that. Turkey will pivot the Middle East and assume a stronger leadership position in the Arab and Muslim world. Could be like a new Ottomanist or modern Islamist version. Third, despite Turkish complaints about the lack of tangible solidarity from the West after the coup, along with the erosion of democracy and the rule of law in Turkey, Ankara will stick with the West. Don't forget, because it's quite dependent. This is the third version. And fourth version is that Turkey will chart a middle course, broadly equidistant to all of the alternatives, nominally remaining in NATO yet substantially decreasing cooperation with the Atlantic Alliance and slightly pivoting to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and to the Muslim world at the same time, while assuming a much more independent posture in its foreign relations. I'll finish. So I think we have time for the question session. So my prediction is that Turkey will follow a line between third and the fourth, and much more close to the fourth option. Well, I will talk more in detail in the question and answer session. Thank you.